All right, we are live, popping right in.
What's going on? You got a nice setup over there.
I got the. I mean, we can flex the Eames chair. I don't know if people can see, in the background.
Oh wow, there we go.
Yeah.
This
is Brand Brothers Worldwide. Bima still missing. Could be on Nike. Could have Boeinged him. We'll see what actually happens. Oh, and we got Jordan live from the tundra.
Jordan joining in from
my guys, a lagoon in Florida. Look, this place is. Go check this out. It's like we got a rope swing. It's pretty. This life chose me, so I said I would be here. I'm gonna be here, y'all.
Yeah, this is what happens. So those of you who don't know, a campaign featuring Jordan debuted this week by noted gas station and beverage and golf brand 7-Eleven. Once you become a model for an iconic Americana brand like this, all you're just doing is rope swings in the Poconos and whatever else.
It's true. Kayaking. You only listen to Zach Bryan, and we're
Zach Bryan's there. Hawk Twa's there. Just right off screen.
We haven't given up our Waterloo though, just quite yet. Soon.
All right.
So we got a big Q&A today, gents. Yeah.
Yes. So doing Q&A. So Jordan's joining us, thankfully last minute here, which is great. And then Bima is out, but we're gonna find new time for all of us to do the stream or do the show. So what we thought we'd do today is we took a bunch of questions from, people over the last day, various questions around branding, design, social media, launching brands. And so just going to kind of rapid fire through a bunch of questions, each kind of share our perspectives here. So,
yeah. And so people are asking in the comments already, if you can ask questions, you totally can. We have tons of them that we have lined up that we've already gotten submitted. We will also try to get to whatever we can from people that are here live and just kind of go back and forth as it works. So feel free to ask away in there. And this will be posted online after on our YouTube, so you can go hunt it down.
All right. So let me do this. Let me share so you know what question we're talking about at any moment here. Okay.
One second. I'll move us to a custom layout and then pop a screen on. Perfect. And let's go. And in the meantime, quick review of the new Dyson headphones. I don't know if any of you guys have gotten some time to actually put that together.
I got the Skull Candy gang right here.
He's repping Skull Candy.
Serbia.
Okay, so
welcome, Serbia.
Yeah, I think this is. I think there's a bunch of good questions in here. We will get into all of this. But first question that caught my attention: how would you start building a brand social if you won't get your first run product in 2 months? Oren, do you have any takes on this? I have a bunch.
Yeah. So I mean, you have 2 months is almost like you have so much content you can use to fill that 2-month time with. Because I think you should be explaining to people, obviously, like what's going on. All right, so even look at it this way, tactically, be like, what are you putting out and for who? And then also releasing some of that stuff beforehand, so you can actually get people to decide what you're going to have before they buy it. But basically 2 months is just enough time to run an effective pre-order campaign, basically. And so I would just making sure you're doing all the basic talking about it. If you have longer than 2 months, which most people do, then there's really about building credibility and lifestyle within your niche, et cetera, as well. But Ashwin, if you want to dive deeper.
Yeah, I think there's there's a few tactics here. One is showing and talking about the behind the scenes of building your brand. And so one account that I would follow for this is Minted, especially a lot of this guy, Marcus Malone, who is the founder of that brand. Before releasing a product, the product might be 6 months out, but he's kind of showing the behind the scenes, every step of the process that goes into getting samples, what he likes about them, what he doesn't like about them. And it's just really off the cuff stuff that he's doing from the factory. So that is one strategy, showing the behind the scenes. we also have a friend who has launched a prenatal brand. And prior to even selling any product, he started building an account on TikTok where he wasn't talking about the product itself, but he was talking about the state of prenatal products, what was good, what was bad. He would dig into ones that he found were making like misleading claims or didn't have like the right kind of nutrients that you needed. And so he was really approaching it from the kind of viewpoint of being an authority on this and building credibility, so that when his product did launch, he's basically teed people up saying, hey, everything on the market right now at this affordable price point is subpar for any of these reasons. So I think that's a really good strategy.
And I want to double hit on that real quick, because that's like kind of the strategy, right? I think really you have two options. Like, I mean, honestly, curating in your niche and being like, hey, here's what's happening right now, and establishing yourself as an authority is something you could start doing even if you haven't even decided what you want to make yet. You just know what niche you want to go in. And what he did was perfect. You can do it like someone in the comments was talking about, like, I want to start a wellness brand for blue collar and trades workers. And I have someone in the Instagram was like, I want to do beef jerky, whatever it is. I'm like, look, you go and become even a 5,000 follower expert or 2,000 follower expert on like beef in general, or like the meat industry, or on like what health and wellness looks like for like males in Gen X, like things that are like that, where you're just literally sharing the news, reviewing some of the products yourself, asking questions to other people, and forming some community. Even if you only get 200, 300 followers on there, if they're all people interested in that same thing, and then you go, oh, I'm building a product. Here's what I'm going to do. I want everyone else involved, all of you who have been on this kind of journey with me and who have been exploring these ideas with me, involved in putting that together. Like, that is the advantage that none of us had 10 years ago to be able to do. That is the roadmap for kind of all of this.
Yeah. And I think it's like important to think about also hot takes. Like, obviously, if you're starting a passionate enough about this topic that you're something about it. So you're identifying a need in the market that doesn't exist right now. So what is the problems that exist with the current offering if you were this, health and wellness for blue collar workers? So pointing out all the deficiencies in nutrition and how people are not being served in this niche currently really riles people up sometimes. And then you come in to offer these solutions. Hey, I want to do something about this, and I want to build with this community to offer something that's better than currently exists and how it's underserved now. Also, Ashwin, you should say value is also building in real time as well. So it's not only minted,
Yeah.
No, one successful. But someone had mentioned, Brian had mentioned, like, hey, the Minted has a true filmmaker shooting their content. They do now, but they're like years in. It was like Marcus shooting TikToks of him running and putting pants on for like a hot minute. And for anyone else asking here, you can ask questions there. We're going to get to things as we can get to them, but let's keep burning through, man. What we got next?
Yeah. So let's jump over to, I think this is a good one for all of us. So what are we reading and listening to in our spare time? And I think this is probably, I would first take this in the context of like branding, marketing, social, like how do we just stay up to date on everything? Jordan, you want to hit that first?
Yeah. I mean, so back during my time at Nike, I'm in like sports and culture and fashion and sneakers. So I'm naturally following a lot of the accounts like Hypebeast, Complex, I'm following all the Puma Hoops, Nike basketball, and so I'm just paying attention to what they're doing. And then I kind of have my reactions to it. Who do I listen? I mean, Prof G is a guy I reference a lot in New York. He taught branding at NYU. He's got a lot of hot takes. I mean, he skews probably a little bit older, but there's some general principles. So I listen to some of that stuff, and then I'm just kind of a sports nerd. So I'll be listening to a lot of different sports, and culture things like Bill Simmons and whatnot. And then I'm taking the business context and like what I hear about the world, and then seeing what's being put in the market and identifying where are the gaps, what do I think the opportunities are. And, that's kind of how I formulate, and that's my process. So yeah, sorry about lagging, y'all. I'm in the middle of a Florida lagoon.
Yeah, it's not actually that bad on the lag, but Prop G and Bill Simmons, you got the East Coast media elite portion of this kind of locked in here. It
helps balance my Texas rural nature.
Ashwin, what are you listening to? What are you reading?
In this context, so I talk a lot about CPG brands. There's some like great aggregators. CPG Wire is a good one just to stay on top of news. Express Checkout for my buddy Nate Rosen is a great aggregator too. And what I mean by aggregator is just all of the news that's happening with CPG brands, rebrands, funding announcements, acquisitions. It's a great way to stay just kind of like on top of things each week, a roundup, just kind of seeing like what trends are happening in the market and so on. One voice that I really listen to in the space is this guy, Dr. James Richardson. He wrote this book called Ramping Your Brand. He's pretty active on LinkedIn. He probably gives more kind of like sober and realistic and hyper detailed takes and analysis on the success and failures of CPG brands, especially from a retail standpoint. So I always find just like the way that he articulates things through writing is fantastic. His book, Ramping Your Brand, is also great. That's kind of what I'm listening to in the CPG world. From time to time, I try to like fill a little time with like the Acquired podcast, but those are pretty long kind of deep dives. But to Jordan's point, the way that I stay kind of on top of just what's happening in the world of branding and marketing is really through like TikTok and Instagram and like following these brands and seeing what brands are doing. Liquid Death's always putting shit out, and I'm just like, okay, what's my reaction to this and why do I think it's interesting? So yeah, that's kind of my diet.
And I guess I'm just getting a lot less than usual. Like I consume like markedly less than I used to, which is just really a function of the time that now has to get spent creating. But I do read a decent amount on Substack. I read Casey Lewis on Substack. I read Angelica, ANDJELICAAA on Substack, and kind of like a few others who like, I think there's good aggregators on there who will pick out kind of a few of the right things, but I'd say I'm getting definitely more reading from newsletters than ever. And then still some print, the classics, Harper, the New Yorker, the Economist, all the, I'm getting the print version of Jordan's East Coast Media Elite Diet. What else we got on here next?
One more thing in there. If you're not in the industry and you want to be, you can go to like Ashwin mentioned Liquid Death. They have like a VP of creative who's really entertaining on LinkedIn. Like if you want to find your favorite, probably smaller brands, go to the brand on LinkedIn, find the people who work there. And there may be some of the people who are actually sharing kind of some of the work they're doing and the stuff behind it. Once you get super niche, then you can be following like the people who are at the agencies who create all the work in the realm that you're in. And then that's when you're figuring out who's actually creating. In case y'all don't know, the corporation may do a big ad and something really interesting or a rebrand, but then the clicking out who the agency is, who did it for them, who worked on it, and then sometimes that gives you more information.
All right, next up here, how would you create a strong brand without niching down? This is an interesting one because I often talk about the importance of niching down, especially when a brand starts out. And I think there's a few kind of important ideas to consider here. The way that a brand should be thinking about their audience and their messaging is different from when they're going from $0 to $1 million, from $1 million to $10 million, from 10 to 100 and 100 plus. And so a lot of people will say, hey, well, if you look at how Athletic Greens talks about their product, they're, for everyone. And that therefore, like we should also be for everyone because everyone can take Athletic Greens. But, the brand that's making that comparison is a brand doing $200,000 a year. That's just kind of started out. And so you shouldn't draw comparisons to brands that are not at your scale. You should be saying, hey, how was Athletic Greens positioning when it was kind of day one here? And so for the most part, in almost all categories, I do think that in order to create a strong brand, last week we were talking about like Bandit, right? And how, Bandit is like really owning the running community and like leaning into events there and leaning into speaking to that audience. And like, they like found that niche. Now, could anyone wear, could people who work out wear Bandit gear? People who like work out and don't run wear Bandit gear? Absolutely. But if they just launched as like, hey, we're a fitness athleisure brand, they're competing with like the Fabletics, the Lululemons, all of these other brands that kind of like own those categories. So it makes their job a lot harder. that's one example in the fashion space. But if we take an example like there's this brand Hero Cosmetics, which made like pimple patches, right? For that type of product, you don't have to niche down when you start, because like, all right, everyone has acne, they have this problem, it's a painkiller, let's just like sell this product. And so you can get, depending on the category and type of product and the problem that you're solving or how you fit into the consumer's lifestyle, there's a possibility of just like creating a really strong like product that has a lot of sales without necessarily like needing that brand. But I would say like my 90% answer is like, especially early on, like niching down matters a lot. I don't know. What are your guys' takes on this?
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself, why do I not want to niche down, right? And a lot of the time that comes down to you don't know who to niche down to or know who your customer is. Because if you're like, hey, I have such a wide TAM, or I have a product that is so appealing to so many people, like you're going to end up having to niche down 10 times as you form like the substructures of like your marketing and your personas and stuff anyway. And so I really think that question is a bit of a crutch of just not wanting to go down and like dive into who these personas are. And if the question is instead, how do I actually define who's getting my product, et cetera? Like we just have these communication tools right now that are amazing for it, right? Like I surveyed my Instagram stories earlier this week for a new brand concept I'm working on and got like thousands of replies voting on like names and colors and stuff like that. And people saying I would buy this or I wouldn't buy this and like opinions on that. And you have the ability on Twitter and Threads and all these places or by running advertisements or whatever that is to actually get so much opinion and info on your customer. And like even like emailing every existing customer you get for your first, like I emailed the first 120 valuable customers directly, just asking them what's up. Like, I think there's just very basic manual legwork that so many people can do to actually just get in the mix there.
Yeah, I would also like question whether they actually mean what they're saying. I mean, because the examples you offered, Ashwin, like a pimple patch, like that's probably targeted towards, probably a younger audience, SKUs, and that's probably a general niche itself. The other thing to add is these algorithms are going to niche you down either way. And if it doesn't know where to send people, so to use all the tools that Oren just mentioned, you have a massive cheat code at your fingertips right now with the social media algorithm. So the further you can niche down is great. Yasmin TV also mentioned mixing multiple unconventional mediums with curiosity and confidence is an interesting thing, like taking two groups of people. I use this as an example. I say, like, in the television era, they would try to slot you, but like, okay, men, 35 to 4, you must like trucks and beer for the NFL. But these days, you can also be women 25 to 44 who like fashion and like Taylor Swift. You may also be liking the NFL and be served in a different way. And so I would just encourage this person to think about maybe there is a niche that they can lean into, expand from there. But it generally doesn't work the other way around. You generally don't start very broad and then eventually niche. Like, you usually have to start pretty niche and then broaden from there.
All right, what we got for the next one?
All right, let's hit this. I think this is really in kind of Jordan and OJ's territory, but what does campaign planning look like end to end?
Jordan, you want to kick off?
Jesus, don't take me back there.
You left for a reason.
Yeah. Okay. All right. How long do we have, boys? Okay. Campaign planning. So like from a brand standpoint, I was in brand marketing and our job was to kind of sell and to steer. And I say this a lot for like creative journalists or marketers. Our job is to take in a lot of inputs from around us and then try to formulate a cohesive opinion and vision to carry out. And so we would have to understand what is the product that we need to, what is the product and the product that is needed, who is the audience that we're trying to reach or that we're struggling to reach right now that we're, trying or we want to continue to hammer home with and increase participation or sales with. What is the market happening? What is our consumer wanting? What is happening in culture? What are the athletes, influencers, entertainers that we have at our fingertips who might have an authentic connection to this? And then where are the moments coming up on a calendar that we think this will be able to break through and will have the most relevance? And then, we agencies and or functions. Functions are different parts of the business like PR, digital comms. I'm sorry, I'm giving you kind of like a corporate example. Oren is like doing a great, smaller brand himself right now. So I'll look to OJ in just a second for that. But and then so you're getting all of them, and then I call it selling and steering. You want to brief them on the vision, then they come back and say, here's what we're thinking, or here's what we're headed. And from a brand standpoint, then we're trying to pull them back into a cohesive vision. Say, okay, I love that. Can we make it a little more like this? Or I love the athlete you've talked about, but can we add so-and-so to the mix as well? And so that's where you need someone who has the 10,000 foot view to kind of bring all of it together. And that's the beauty of a well-run brand campaign. And a lot of things can go off the rails there. And that's why I think a lot of my content is like, this stuff might look easy, but it's really, really hard to do and execute. And it's probably even harder when you're doing it in a smaller format right now and building it from the ground up, which is what Oren's doing as well.
Yeah, and I could talk about this a lot because I work on campaigns constantly, and I have all these frameworks. And so I did this creative ops report for our hyper newsletter a while back, where we actually break down like step by step what's going on. But I think there's three key concepts to think about. Like like almost everything is a campaign, right? That's the first thing, is that brands need to define their narrative. It's actually the YouTube video I'm doing Sunday is going to be about this, like an exercise around this, where it's literally like a brand narrative is all the characters that you have in your brand, the people that are talking for your brand, the creators you have, whatever. And you have the storylines, like the things that are happening or you're promoting. But then you have the events, and campaigns ties into the events, where you're looking at your calendar and you're going, we have a product launch here, we have a trade show here, we have Valentine's Day here, whatever, all of the things that we have to actually work around. And then when you actually begin to piece that out and be like, oh man, we have this launch here, we have that launch here, we have this show, we have blank, you start to realize we don't really have much time, no matter who you are, of like to actually get so many of these things done. Even as a small new brand, I'm like, okay, my first sales are like this, and then I have holiday coming, and that's Black Friday, and we have this trade show in November. Okay, my schedule's pretty much done. And so when you have that, you begin to look at, okay, then how do we make use of it? So like the second piece you have is like, what are the assets that actually matter for your campaigns and like organization? Because it's usually a lot more than people think, right? And then you tie that to your characters you have in your brand narrative. So for instance, I'm going to put out a campaign on my main channel, but then I'm going to show the behind the scenes with me, or with the creative director is going to post some of that, or we want the photographer to actually be posting, or the 7 influencers we have in the campaign that are part of the storytelling, or the models that are in it, and what are they doing? You start to be like, what are all the assets that we want from those people? Because I think what a lot of brands fail at, one of the things I spend a lot of time in consults working on, is being like, hey, you hired 6 or 7 models for this campaign or whatever, but none of them are contracted to post. But these 3 of them are it girls, and they have 600,000 followers or whatever it is. Or none of them have any followers, but you're paying them $2,000 day rates. You should just be using influencers, even if it takes your shoot 4 hours longer. And how do you make them part of the narrative? What assets are you requesting? Because for the same price tag, you could probably get posts and get themselves inside the content. And so it's like, all right, you get all your characters and the assets you need, you get your timing, and then you have your campaign execution. And one of the pro tips I'll give you, anyone that's going into campaigns like this, especially if you're at a bigger company, is you actually have to start with realism and where you're at instead of your goals. You have to be like, what can we get approved? Like, what have we been failing at recently? And can we change that paradigm? Like, are we going to continue to do the same thing that we're already doing that is whack? Are we going to continue to do the same thing we're already doing that's working? Or are we going to change it? And if we want to change it, who do we have to get approval from? What metrics do we have to put out there for success, and actually define that? And that actually ends up being a huge time suck for a lot of people, or else you just repeat the same stuff you're not working on. But then once you kind of get there, you can actually have your full build out of like, okay, what are the things happening in culture we should leverage? Kind of, to Jordan's point, start organizing. Where are we taking influence from? What do we think is going to perform? How do we build back to get that? Who all is involved? What is the rollout and the timing? How do we do that across medium? And then the last thing I'll touch on that I'm working with brands even more on now is that people will put out a campaign. It'll be live for the first 3 days. Everyone posts it, and then it's just gone. And it's like, no, how do you build your campaigns into the schedule for the next 12 weeks, where you can go 4 weeks later, show all the behind the scenes, 6 weeks after that, a bunch of the unreleased footage, hey, we have 3 posts, but really we have 12 posts worth of content. Or like, hey, let's save some of this footage for for like an aggregation trend. Like that brand, Der Schutz, was doing a trend where people were like talking shit on brands for not being creative enough, and they just throw in a compilation of all their old campaign footage. It's like, okay, how do we continue to make sure we utilize this creative idea we've had again and again? So anyway, a topic I'm passionate about and spent a lot of time in, but figured it'd be a good one.
I just want to add to Oren, like, even if I was not in the 7-Eleven campaign, I would say, like, I advocated for this at Nike. Get the bang for your buck. So 7-Eleven just hired 5 of us who have varying degrees of influence. See, sometimes now we have this pushback of like, we joke that we're tier 2 golf influencers. which may actually end up doing better for you sometimes, but you get a lot of reach out of the models, then they're all posting, and you're not having to spend all that money on paid media. You're getting a lot of organic reach, you know.
Yeah. All right, what we got up next?
All right, let's talk product. No budget ways to move product.
I mean, create organic content. That's your number 1, 2, and 3 no budget ways to do that. And if you mean like no budget, like obviously you can, like, if you can't send product to anybody, that's your only choice. Like, you make content on the internet. Like, I don't know, that's a pretty easy one.
Yeah. Yes. I think at the very least, I don't want to say no budget. The no budget answer, true no budget, we can't send any product to anyone, is like, yeah, you just have to focus on organic content then. If you can sample product, then okay, great. Sampling product in the real world also like depends on the category here. But gifting as much product as you can. And so what that looks like is, you know, there's obviously the world in which you partner with like influencers and creators who, you know, say, hey, pay me anywhere from $500 to $5,000 to $50,000 to post. I'm not talking about finding those creators. I'm talking about if you have a product, say it's a new non-alcoholic beer, right? Then it's like, okay, I'm going on TikTok and Instagram. I'm finding like every creator who is, first category, who is like just talking publicly about like cutting back on drinking, let's say, and you can find that just like easily searching on TikTok. And it's like, great, I'm going to watch all of their videos where they're talking about this. I'm going to DM them and say, hey, like, you know, love your content, watch your videos. Saw you mention this, wear this new NA beer brand, would love to send you some. And you do that enough times, it's just super manual effort. So, you know, the investment is your time. But you'll find a lot of people who are interested in trying out your product. And then, you know, 50% of them, 70% of them will post about your product. And then that's a way to start building a flow. And what really is important there is like building a one-to-one relationship with them. Yeah, I would say that. Jordan, anything to add here?
It's still the highest investment. Seeding is the jargon term for it, seeding product into the world, because those seeds can grow into full trees sometimes, to take that analogy to its fruition, no pun intended. And a lot of brand, you know, I'm sure all of you guys get packages. I get packages every week. I'll give you Melon. I did some work with Melon, Oakley. Like I wear this hat in every freaking video I do, and some of them get 3 million views, and some of them get, you know, 13,000. But they're getting a lot of views out of the cost of your product plus some shipping. So it's still one of the best returns on investment. You know, we all learn time equals money as well. So you're gonna have some type of budget. The other example that we talked about last week, Ashwin, that I love from your brand was like doing the sign in the street, the man on the street stuff, where you're just like, hey, sample this, try this, and get some content out of it. I thought that was super creative and a real grassroots effort, almost doing like the poster and table out in a busy place. It's, you know, it's still man on the street, has been working for thousands of years and still does.
Yes, and it works for a lot of brands really well, and we get a great return on that for what is like a fairly inexpensive exercise to go out there and do.
Quick hit on this. We got a question in the chat that I want to just clear out real quick too, and it kind of ties to this, in that like if you have no budget to do a product, like you should be making a product in the first place. And like, and if you do truly have no budget, then it's like it is organic or essentially nothing. And if you have a budget, there's a number of things to do. And we got this question from Vance, who was like, how to actually run ads. Everyone on YouTube is contradicting each other. And so I run a lot of ads personally. And like, look, and like Google and YouTube is like, you can just follow the tutorials, and there's actual reps you can get from Google and YouTube that are pretty straightforward to give you the basics of how to do that. But like meta ads is hard and changing, and everyone that's contradicting themselves around that is because there's all kinds of people that run meta ads differently. Things are changing constantly. You can look at content from 6 months ago that doesn't reflect how ASC works today or whatever it is. But also it's like I've run meta ads on my own brands now for like 6 years. And whenever I get above like, if I'm spending above 20K a month, I try not to do it myself. I basically am like, hey, I need to go with a pro, and I have like pros that I go to, but also it's a continual learning. Like I'm doing a paid program right now. It's called Meta Ads at Scale. That's like it's just like a masterclass type thing where there's a guy, he has all these workshops, they coach you, there's live Zoom calls. I can go in there and be like, I'm learning this thing, I'm trying to do this trial, someone's going to get back to me, and it's whatever it is, like you're paying thousands of dollars to be in it, but like I know 100% that like I have support there as I'm trying to grow and scale that. And like I would, instead of like relying on YouTube, I think that's the kind of thing where it's worth investing in. Not like a course, but like especially like a live program where you can actually be in it. I think there's really no better way to learn that type of stuff, and to stay consistent on it, right? Like if you're not in the trenches every day, you're not keeping up with what's happening on Meta.
All right, let's get to switching gears a little bit. Getting better at presenting designs in meetings to team members. So I think the broader question here. So let me actually just take this question. So, for context, I have a branding and design agency. And so, for probably like the first 3 or 4 years of our agency, there's inevitably this moment when you're presenting design work to the client, whether that's like interface design work or branding work or packaging work. And the client doesn't like this aspect, or they start nitpicking on that aspect. And then the conversation can quickly devolve into them trying to be a backseat designer for things. And you, if you're like just the designer and you're kind of like starting out doing this, you're just like, I don't even know like how to fight back to this. And then it's always like, the client just like doesn't know what they're doing and doesn't know what they're talking about. It can be a really frustrating experience. So one thing that I have found that is really, really important and kind of helpful, and I think this applies to whether you're doing digital design work, branding design work, communicating or presenting any idea or trying to get buy-in for any idea, is number one, making sure everyone understands the kind of like strategy behind what we're doing, right? And so when we're designing a brand, right, one of the projects that we're working on right now, this is a blank label, but we're designing we're working with a non-alcoholic wine brand. And so if we kind of like did our intake and then we're like, hey, okay, in 4 weeks, we're going to talk to you and just like present to you a bunch of like different label designs, the chances of them liking that any one of those like 3 or 4 label designs that we present is going to be pretty low, right? And they're going to be like, I don't know, that doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. So the most important part before that presentation is actually the strategy of it. So understanding, okay, what is the entire landscape? What does the entire market look like? What are these brands doing differently, or what are they doing the same? How do we want to stand out? What is the point of view that we want to reflect? What is the entire how do we want this to come across? How do we want to sit on shelves and be perceived? And once that strategy is really well defined, then it's almost inevitable the aesthetic outcome of it. And so then it's much easier to get buy-in there because you brought people along for that journey. So that's like one example from the branding, kind of like packaging design. When we were doing digital design, I remember vividly meetings where we would present interface designs. We were like working with this large digital bank, and we just presented interface designs, and we're just like, well, it's kind of self-evident, right? You should just allow someone to look at it and be like, yeah, it looks good. That the flow freaking makes sense here. But when you do that and you don't give people rationale for why you did things, even if you feel like you're saying like nonsense or saying the obvious, they will immediately go to like, well, how can I give productive feedback here? So let me like call on things that are like negative or should be changed. So I learned like from those meetings that it's really important to say like, hey, okay, we're designing like an ACH transfer page. Here's the surveying that we did of all ACH transfers across banks. Here's what we thought is good. Here's where we think they need improvement. And so, okay, this is why we designed this screen this way and placed all of these things here. And you give people that rationale, and then they're like, okay, yeah, I totally get it. Like no notes, no comments here. So it's kind of taking them along for the ride and really like presenting your logic.
Yeah, that's a great, I think whether you're presenting a campaign, whether you're presenting, I mean, y'all, the running joke that I present decks all the time, because basically at Nike, I learned how to present. You couldn't talk in a meeting without presenting something. And I think it's no coincidence that I was drawn to, like, I almost went to law school. You're essentially like a litigator. You are like presenting your case in everything. And, you know, even in the content that we do, we're sometimes coming with hot takes, and we're like, here's the landscape, here's the problem, here's what we're trying to solve for. And this is why we think this is the right solution. And so I think these poor designers, sometimes poor marketers, poor creatives, we just want to do our job and be creative. But there's so much more than that when you're bringing other people along with you. And Ash, when I'm having like PTSD going back to like those meetings, if you've ever been in a design meeting that's gone off the rails, there's no coming back from it, because a lot of people who are not designers start giving feedback and trying to be designers. And so I just want to reiterate, I think, Ashwin's point and why I think people say in so many creative realms about telling a story, which always sounded very like ethereal to me and not tangible, but it is like you're building the story, you're building a narrative to land at a logical conclusion that you want everyone to land on. The last thing I would just say is that it's also important to kind of summarize the brief back to the person, or like, hey, just want to make sure, just reviewing what we all said we were trying to do here and what we all agreed upon going forward. That's why we have X, Y, and Z. And so it's often about what's ahead of the design presentation and in the context, not just presenting the.
It's interesting because I recently changed how I do this to be like very different. I used to do the same thing with the brief and the presentation, but in 2023, like early, I started doing, I have like a 5-question contract that we do on campaigns, where basically it's like before you go into any work, whether it's a client work, I was doing a lot of internal work then, it'd be like, here's these 5 things. We're going to present multiple concepts, and we're usually going to do the like the 4 or 5th, anything that has like 4 or 5 of these, of all 5 of these, and the answer is yes, like is a go. And and this is our framework before we actually start working to go work from. And so the 5 questions are basically, does it match our brand voice? And then it helps to be like, hey, we have a defined brand voice, we have a defined brand guide, we know who we are. And so you can get that out of the way first. Would our customer like this? And then how do we determine if our customer likes this? I usually have a customer committee at most brand projects I work on, or we have like some way of quantifying that. And then the third is like, would our customer share this? Which is always hard to kind of get in the middle of. You can start pulling up references. The 4th is, do we love it? And then the 5th is, can we get it approved, or can we get it through legal when I was internal? But it's like, here's your 5 list. Like, does it match our brand voice? Will our customer like it? Would our customers share it? Do we love it? Can we get it approved? And if you get to 4 out of 5 of those things, you're fucking murdering it, right? And usually what it comes down to is when you actually go through at a committee of people, and you'll see that first 3 that really matter, which is the brand voice, the customer likes it, the customer will share it. If the answer is we don't love it or we can't get it approved, you can fight those down, right? By basically being like, the customer agrees on this, especially if you have some data points to point to. So that's the framework that I go into like basically all client work with now and like sign people up for from the beginning.
Legal is like the 7th layer of hell and Dante's Inferno. I mean, that's a tough one, bro.
All right,
because we're cooking, Brian. It's because why the frying pan's on there.
All right, here's one that Oren, you and I were talking about the other day. Commercial productions on a tight budget, 150K, tips and best practices. And Oren, you were throwing out some pretty interesting numbers there.
Yeah. So we were talking about this because I ran TV last year to support a product that was in Costco and Costco, Walmart, Target. And we ran linear remnant TV, and we ran sponsored TV through Amazon, which I'm actually about to do an ad for. And then we ran in cinema pre-roll in Target markets near Costco's. And so we were going on to make creative. And it's funny because you'll see this. There are brands that spend $500,000 on YouTube videos that don't go anywhere, right? Or spend $500,000 on TV creative or TV creative for linear remnant or whatever that looks like. And linear remnant, for what it's worth, is like traditional TV, but it's like extra stuff that you can get for cheap because no one bought it and you like piece stuff together. It's a really affordable way to buy into television when you're a smaller brand. But like, 150K is not a tight budget. That's a tight budget for creative agencies that love to spend money. Like, so we did a TV campaign complete with like 3D actors, full lighting and stuff. I've shown Ashwin the spot. Looks like, what you'd see from like a Harry's ad or a, Dollar Shave Club type thing. Like say like it's a B version if that's an A. And like we had a 40K all in budget, and that's like crew, actors, the whole thing. And it was tight. We had 2 internal people that were working on it. But like that is realistically nowadays, when you are not paying full agency take, then I'd say a 50 to 75K is a budget worthy for a TV spot. If you're not doing a TV spot and you're doing like a production level, like it's just for your YouTube or whatever, like there is no way in hell you should be spending more than like 10 or 15 grand for like an ad asset. In fact, like it's doing yourself a disservice not spending that on 5 or 6 ad assets that you can test and build into a narrative than you are spending it on that one campaign. There's just nothing that costs that much now, unless you are literally just paying the agency uptake and you're just paying for some McKinsey guy's jet at that point.
Yeah, I mean, having been at a company that, you know, our agencies wouldn't roll out of the bed for less than $1 million on a production budget. But I agree with you fully. The world has changed in content creation over the last 10 years dramatically. And some of the best campaigns I ever did were on tight budgets. Creativity can thrive in constraints sometimes. I'm going to guess that Miss Hamilton here is like working, I don't know, with cars maybe or something like that. Like maybe that would be perceived, but you should see the stuff that can be done. Young creators, camera equipment has gotten so much cheaper, audio, all kinds of things. It's we're not in this day and age anymore. I would save all that budget for paid later or to try to get it seen. And what the mistake a lot of companies do is they end up spending it all on the production and they don't have any dollars to actually make it get seen.
And let me throw a grenade into the chat real quick. So I want to talk about the $4.3 billion that Nike spent last year on creative agencies for their retention focus, right? So $4.3 billion on creative, not even the promoting of the creative. And so I feel like there's all these companies that are stuck in this scenario, right? Where like, if realistically you look at it and you're on a shoot and you're paying the top side of what you get indie, it's like $1,500 to $2K for a model. Say you have 10 models in your shoot, you're in $20K, right? And then location. I mean, if you're on Pure Space, you're getting from a location, whatever, $5 grand, 10 grand. So now you're at 30. Now you have 3 or 4 people at their day rates with gear and all that. Let's say you're maxing that out another $5K for each of those. And you have a 6-person team, another $30K. Now you're at 70, $80K with a like amazing team with an amazing location with 10 models, throwing another $20K for production and rentals and stuff. That's $100,000, and you should be making fucking movies with that shit at a day rate. And so what I would encourage any companies, I feel like we're going to get into this era where we're tied into contracts and buddy relationships. And again, the Saatchi executives need jets. But like these people should just be cutting it. Like a $4.3 billion budget, I would be cutting RFP everyone out. In fact, I'd make it a moratorium at a company like that you cannot use any pre-existing vendor. That we need to go into a new year or a new cycle only with vendors that have not been through our process, so we can A, price it right, B, and have new creative ideas, and C, just have no fucking buddy talk on what the approval process looks like. Anyway, I'm lit.
Nike tried this and it failed. It failed not because the strategy couldn't actually work, but because people can't think. What I found was, and you see this with so many corporations, this is going to hurt, is like everybody would love to be ahead of time, like have all the time in the world to actually plan something out. But what happens is when you get crunched and you're like, I need this in 6 weeks, you have to go back to the people that you can just call that know the old way of doing things. New ways sometimes are harder to do, but it's worth it to try to do the
I felt like that, like almost 2 years ago, I feel like that would 100% be the case. You'd do it and you'd fail. But now it's like, if you can't execute a campaign as a brand new vendor in 4 weeks and have it be good, you've missed the zeitgeist already. Totally. And so there's all these people that are now trained to react. And so I think that like now we're at this inflection point where that's actually much more able to be executed on than what we saw prior.
Now's a great time to plug my YouTube video from last week. Go check it out. Yeah. Ashwin.
I think, one important point that Jordan said, just in terms of like the cost of producing really high quality stuff is kind of compressed as with like cost of doing any kind of creative work. I've seen so many videos on TikTok of people who are just like good camera people. They're good at editing. They will take a random product or go up to someone at a gas station who has like a Ferrari and they'll be like, hey man, can I shoot a commercial for you? They'll show you the entire behind the scenes of shooting that commercial in a day with that owner just for free so they can build that portfolio. And you watch the end product and it's like, that's a better commercial than Ferrari would ever put out. That's a better commercial than Mustang would ever put out. Like and that's one person, right? So if I'm working at some of these agencies, if I'm working at like either the agency or if I'm working at the large brand, I'm like, let me go hire that person to like, he's done car commercials. Let's go do one with him and pay him 50 grand to like, do all that together. But you're going to save $150,000,
Bro, I'm going to tell y'all the last project I worked on before I left Nike football and moved on. We hired a guy named Gibson Hazard who does like all the biggest rap stars now. He had not done anything in sports, and he had done like a couple early ones. I literally DM'd him on Instagram, and I'm like, "Hey, bro, I think you sports. What would you think? I know this is outside of like your realm, but I could tell like he had the chops to do it." And he was like, "I would love to." Turn out he played college baseball. He was like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." For a fraction of what those traditional agencies are, we had the most successful campaign we've ever had. And guess what? We didn't have to ask LeBron or KD or Saquon Barkley to share it because they naturally did because they thought it was so badass. So like
Gibson's shit's hot. Gibson is the man.
So
yeah,
dope,
yeah. And also he was just
he's
coming right off Instagram. And there's now 100 kids like that. And the fact that they're not getting chosen and picked up all the time is just fucking ludicrous.
It's insane. And someone is sorry. I want to add to this that Sam Stillman, whoever the camera is for Minted, did a campaign for Saucony. He's like 25 or something, and it crushed. It was amazing. So the world is new, and just like Oren, you said, if you're not able to do that anymore, you're missing the boat.
Yeah, well, we'll see what you see. Is you see agencies are going to try and middleman this and be like, cool, we're still going to charge you $2 million, and we're going to pay these guys 30 grand, and that's the shit that like everyone 1,000%. Here should find personally offensive. And anytime they see those people like that, it should be like our imperative to like ensure that those people are not working and exit like within years, right? Like it's the end of that.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I think Jordan, you could probably speak to this, but I think there's this like, you know, I've seen proposals from large branding agencies that'll charge, call it, $700,000 for like a year-long branding campaign, like branding in digital, right? And I'll look at the staffing for that team, and they'll have like 3 project coordinators, 18 junior staff, 7 art directors, 6 copywriters, blah, 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 all these people. And I'll look at the work output in the process, and I'm like, I can do that with 3 people. I can do it with 4 people. Like we do the art direction, we do the copywriting, we do all of this stuff, right? And I think there is this, what probably has to be appreciated too, is that from a large organization, right? An organization like Nike is never going to hire a 3-person team to like do branding on a certain campaign or do design on a certain campaign. There's very much this element of like, hey, I want the robustness of your team to match my team, even if that's just like a little bit of the showmanship here. Like, yeah, we are Nike. We should pay $1 million, and we should get 4 project coordinators and 6 managers like CC'd on every email. And like, you know, it's a little bit of like ego stroking, but I think there's also these kind of like corporate dynamics at play here too. And then like, I think the broad thing here is like, no one ever gets fired for hiring IBM, right? Which is like, you know, go with the risk-free option a little bit.
All right, what we got next up here?
Jordan, you're on mute, by the way.
Sorry, it's also fundamentally dependent on the agency model, 20% of the total. So they need to ramp up that total so they make more.
Yep. So I thought this one is relevant. You know, there's a question in the live here. How did you 3 begin your careers, and what advice would you give to someone starting marketing? And did college teach you this?
I could pop in there. I went to college for design. It was actually very helpful at the time. Not only in design, I was also in like an entrepreneurship program that like had accounting and all these other things. It was actually super useful. But then it was great because there was no like YouTube to go learn design. Like really what was great about that is I had design history and a bunch of basics of industrial and other and graphic and like all the interior, like it was like a overall design program. And then I got like my senior year, I was doing all these seminars that were like getting me deep into Photoshop, which was like extremely useful. But like now, like the Photoshop and educational element of that, like would have been really straightforward to get on YouTube. And so I don't know, it's one of those where like, I feel like at least I could have learned a lot of the skills that were actually applicable to me. I could have completely done outside of that. And I don't think I've ever like put my college down on a resume or even printed a resume in a very long time. It's all like work related. And there's a lot of questions we have like that around here too about like, oh, well, I have this background, people don't take me seriously, or I have to do this on the resume. And at least what I've noticed is like, it's all work related now. It's like, hey, I don't actually care what your background is, whether it's 2 years or 10 years, but like if you have recent relevant work to the things that we're trying to achieve that you played a role on is the most important thing. And doing that often involves either your own creative projects or spec work or making sure you can freelance. But anyway, those are my quick 2 cents to throw in there. Ashwin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I think that's a good point. I think another thing to call out, which I think you mentioned in a either in an earlier live or somewhere else, is that like you did email marketing at first, right? Or like someone told you like,
yeah. One of my early jobs. So basically I was a designer. I worked at a design agency, became a creative director at that same agency. I worked over into basically got like a kind of a content marketing job that was sort of like tech doesn't have creative directors, or at least didn't at that point. So I kind of got this like marketing, more entry level job that was, and in content marketing, we're basically helping come up with the videos and facilitate the photo shoots and whatnot. That was like kind of creative direction oriented. And my boss there was the VP was like, hey, you should learn marketing automation. You'll have a guaranteed 6-figure job for the rest of your life. He told me to get Eloqua certified because Eloqua was like one of the platforms at the time with Marketo and Pardot and anyone who's around in that era. So I went, like, we had Eloqua at the company. They have a training program to do X. I got certified on it. And honestly, he's kind of right. Like even now, like, I can go build out pretty robust. It's way easier now than it was in the Eloqua era, but like I can go build out and I can make any company money on marketing automation and their marketing and email flows and like have that shit dialed. And as a designer with that skill set where I can also design all the emails, like again, I can go make 120K doing that for the rest of my life. And that was an interesting piece of advice I got from somebody. And then ironically, he ended up getting fired and they gave me his job at a later date in that company. But there was just because like they were trying to go, there's a lot of those type moments in tech where it'll be like, we can't pay this guy anymore. There's a disagreement. Let's save money by putting the younger guy in charge. And all of a sudden you're like, in over your head, but you're able to get a lot of work and experience. That's one of the benefits of working in like more startup-y places as well too, is you never know kind of like what you might learn or what you might get thrown into because there's no one else to do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that's a great point. I think there's also like an important call out there, which is like, as you go through this progression, right? Like design is the foundation, but you're stacking these other skills on it, which makes like, all right, if you can do email marketing, that's great. But like, hey, if you're just writing copy for that and you can't go and implement them or you can't design them, then it's like, all right, I'm a little like stuck there. But it's like, if I can implement and I can design them, great. I can do that whole end-to-end thing. That's like, it's 1 + 1 = 3 type thing. But then it's, okay, now, you're so many years into your career and it's like, you can design across medium, across channels. Like you can really take concepts from like idea to launch and execute on all that, which just makes you more valuable.
Well, I think that's why we're all dangerous. And I know Ashwin and I share a lot of really similar skill sets, but like skill stacking is like everything in design and marketing, in my opinion, and in branding in general, where it's like, hey, if you are, because that also leads you into management, right? Like as a designer, I'm very capable of managing other designers. As a video creator, I'm capable of managing social teams. As someone who's done marketing automation and who runs my own Facebook ads, I'm very capable of managing teams that do that and knowing what they are. If I hadn't done any of those things tactically, or I wasn't still tactically able to go into the ads manager account and be like, what the fuck is wrong with the ROAS on fucking this campaign and this thing, and why is our targeting profile like that? You have a really hard time managing. If you have that whole skill set, there's like no reason you're not set up to be an executive like inside of that. And then also to then do your own business, right? And none of those skills are skills that take, like, unless you want to be an amazing designer, there's nothing in that takes you 10 years to be great at. Like design is probably the only exception of like all those other skills are like 24-month skills to be like moderately dangerous at.
100%. If I were to think about someone starting out in marketing today, right? So like, when you were starting out, hey, you're getting like Eloqua certified and like email marketing matters so much. I think that is like, I wouldn't apply that same advice to someone starting out right now. Like, hey, go get really good at email marketing. It's still like super valuable, but like it's become easier and there's like a lot more templates and like a lot more examples to build off of, especially in like the e-com world. What I would look at is like every brand right now, whether this is like a consumer brand or it's a B2B brand, they're all trying to figure out content. They're trying to figure out content from a TikTok and Reels standpoint, a YouTube Short standpoint, a LinkedIn standpoint. They're trying to figure out content. They're trying to figure out like influencer and creator partnerships. And so you have this audience that, or you tend to have these, marketing teams that are, that like know PR really well. They know out of home campaigns. Like you're probably not going to like beat them on that as a 23-year-old just out of college. But what you are going to beat them on is like, this is the voice and culture that's happening on TikTok right now. Hey, you're a protein supplement brand, or like, hey, you're an energy drink brand. And like, you are living in 2014 on your socials, right? And it's like, I'm telling you right now, that is like not the brands that are doing well. Like these are the brands that are doing well. Here's what I think your strategy should be. Here's how I would approach that content. And if you can, you basically have this like arbitrage opportunity where they have a little bit of a lack of knowledge and they're looking for someone to come in and be like, hey, what should we do with our socials? And you are like right in that demographic or audience that is so tuned into things and know when things are cringe, like the moments that are happening, what's like viral and not, that like if you can leverage that as an entry point, that's what I would leverage for someone starting out in marketing, is like find that entry point through organic content, through influencer seeding, through influencer gifting. You reach out to these brands because 9.9 out of 10 of them are still trying to figure it out, and they're looking for support and they're looking for some perspective. That's what I would say is the entry point. And then once you're in, you can start to grow. And then it's like, okay, is that the valuable thing 5 years from now? No, probably not, because everyone's going to be like leveled up. But then you can weave, you can go to something else. But it's hard to get like more perspective than a few years out.
It's not slowing down anytime soon, though. Hopefully, this monsoon that just hit me in Florida, for those of y'all who are tuning in, I'm riding for this. It's probably gonna be my last question, but I do think social 10 years ago was still the cheat code, to have, and it really helped me in my career. So I know we're all social biased here, but if you remember last week, we started the jokes off and like, what's Gen Z wearing in the streets? Like, that's what's happening around conference rooms. Executives are going, what's the thing Gen Z is doing that they don't know about? If you're young in your career, that is the thing that you have an advantage on. You have youth, you're tapped into the culture more. And if you're not in that platform,
I think we're
missing an opportunity.
Jordan.
All right.
Almost
Love
lost
y'all.
Jordan to the monsoon.
Gotta go. Love y'all. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
My guy. All right, cool. A couple more minutes left here. Let's see what we got.
Are there any? Let's see if there's any questions that we missed from.
And I realized too, I put this in my broadcast channel too, and there's 15 questions in there I didn't even look at. All right, so I'm gonna hit a couple real quick. Do phone handheld videos take away from the luxury aspect of a brand? It's like, no, not at all. I think the actual content of what's being captured by the phone is what makes it luxury or not. And you can make anything look amazing on an iPhone. How do you stand out with that much funds? Where do you guys look for photographers to work with? I look on Instagram. Honestly, my Instagram DMs is like probably the primary selling point. What about you, brother?
For photography, videography, for designers, I'm finding everyone on Instagram. Just people who have a certain style that I'm looking to emulate. I just reach out to them there. And I find that's kind of like the best place for it.
And then I have a bunch here. I actually have multiple questions on what does it take to get to be a creative director, art director. Creative director is funny. It's like there's no career path to being a creative director. Like you need to be a good designer. It's really hard to hire someone who's not a good designer or in there. But then you need to have the capability and the network to execute complex campaigns. So basically, capability, network, and vision, which are three things that are actually like very complex to execute. Where you have to be able, like, someone wants to do a campaign, you need to be able to come up with all the concepts and get them approved. We talked about earlier, get all the photographers and videographers and have a network of people that will like work immediately to do something great. And you need to have the strategic mindset to be able to move stuff forward in the culture. And you need to be able to show that you can do that, to have like proven that you have the experience to do that. And that is actually an extremely hard thing to like attain to without basically working your way through multiple jobs and like doing a bunch of projects and like kind of going out there on a limb in some of the other projects you do and really hammering your way up through an org that like has a creative structure. So that's kind of a hard one. I don't know, Ashwin, do you have any kind of thoughts on that and those kind of jobs?
No, I think it's hard because it's a kind of like it's an amalgam. It's a mashing of so many different skill sets. And so really, if I'm starting out, it's really that idea that we talked about of skill stacking. It's like, okay, let me develop this taste around like art direction. Let me become a really good art director. Then like, okay, a few years out, let me become a really good copywriter. Then a few years out, let me become like a really, let me try my hand at content creation. And then over time, I've stacked enough of these skills where it's like, I can look at a campaign and I can, pull in the right people and like direct the right people to bring that campaign to life or bring that kind of like creative vision to life. So I think that's more so something that you do later on in your career than someone who's 25 years old and it's like, hey, I'm a creative director now.
Joe, I'm gonna try to get to Jody to get to some of your questions here. What are some successful brands I can be inspired by who built their name on creating culture, sexiness, and funny branding in a market of bland or nerdy products? What are any kind of typical ones you've seen kind of stand out in that? Ashwin, you got any good ones there?
Yeah, I mean, first,
Razors.
like Dr. Squatch stands out. These are like generally like guy oriented brands. Like Dr. Squatch stands out. Dollar Shave Club stands out. I mean, there are these. You could probably look kind of in any category of product that is sold in convenience stores and supermarkets, and you have these like kind of like legacy Procter and Gamble incumbents. Here's a brand that I saw the other day is Laundry Sauce, which is like quite literally like making it like sexy for guys, for like doing their laundry, like great scents, nice packaging.
Yeah, Manscaped. It's a good one. Yeah, GoDaddy. Yeah, so Antonio's coming in with the heat per usual in the comments.
Yeah. So you can kind of like go across any of these categories and find some of these brands.
All right, and we're hitting up on the hour. I've got to pop into this next call here, but appreciate y'all for joining us. Follow Shwinnebagobrand. Good luck searching that successfully with the spelling at Orenmeetsworld. We will be back next Friday, I think, with the full gang. So we will have Bima. If we're paying the ransom, so we should be able to get Bima back from Jordan Brand. Jordan Rogers. We'll see if the monsoon he makes it out or not. But I appreciate every one of y'all coming in here. I know we didn't get to all of them. We try to hit as many questions as we can, but doing what we can. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Can any of us figure out how to end this stream? Okay.